Go Wednesday. Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dale. It's good to see you all here on a Wednesday, as we're going to bring in AV in just a moment as we get back to our usual show, Into the Wire, with some headlines to discuss, including New York and how it's booming, and everyone's good friend Chuck Schumer now pointing the finger. Surprise, surprise, at the 11th hour, which does not surprise us whatsoever. So with that, let's welcome in Mr. AV. Good to see you. How's things?
Yeah. It was going good until the close. Everything started to really roll over. Going into the close, and the move to the downside really compounded. Air was the biggest loser of the day, down 19%. Riv Capital, Forefront, Cannabis, MSOs was down 13%, and Varrell finally cracked, ending the day at $1.27 a share, down 11.8%. So big red day. It's not very high volume, but it's also not low volume either.
Today's December 11th. We're in full swing of tax loss selling season, right?
Yeah. I mean, I came out and said, I think it was last week, that don't bother looking at cannabis stocks until the year's over. Come January, I mean, there's going to be tax loss selling. Not really a bid right now. The bottom's probably not in.
Need to ask the question with Dan, the chart guys, to ask, look, if you're still holding, do you get out now, or do you like this far in? Do you wait until the new year? It's a good question. I'll have to ask him later this week.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't give those opinions.
I know you don't, but how have you been? You know, a lot of people missed you on Monday. You went down to Jamaica for the weekend, and then had a little mechanical issue on the plane, from what I heard. Yes.
Yeah, got back yesterday mid afternoon.
Yeah.
It was a nice, quick little vacation, and I'll be home for the rest of the year.
Well, if there's ever a place that you want to stick around for another day, Jamaica's not too bad, right?
No, can't really complain. Weather was nice.
Was it?
It's about to get cold in Florida. We're supposed to get like high 50s tonight. That's
not too bad, especially where I'm going this weekend. Expecting 12 inches of snow, but
better have the chains out.
That's why I want to move to Florida. All right, let's begin. TDR Traded Black, Into the Wire. Haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, but here we are. And let's begin with New York is booming. More and more men building in the state for the legal market. One that you like to describe, as you said, New York is booming. So 2 months ago, there was an update regarding the state's growth in adult sales. And it appears since that time, the bullish story has become even more bullish. You want to walk us through some of the numbers that you came across recently that were just reported?
Yeah, so there was a presentation that Jeremy Burke covered this morning from the Office of Cannabis Management in New York about some of the growth numbers. I mean, they're hitting 919 million as it is year to date. They're looking to eclipse the $1 billion mark for 2024. This is great news coming out of New York. They're up to 261 dispensaries that are open. They're actively closing illegal dispensaries day by day, and this is a bright spot for the industry. A lot is yet to be determined if this is as per what the inflection point is going to be when a lot of the medical businesses flip into the adult use market and pay that fee. Interesting data point. There's a current lawsuit that's actually suing the OCM in the state about that fee, claiming that it's onerous and to start to restructure it to some degree. But this is great. I mean, we haven't really talked about a lot of positive things.
No.
In the last couple of weeks. New York hitting $1 billion run rate in 2024, and then hopefully growing in 2025 is a good data point and a good story. And there's some quality companies that are there right now that are heavily invested in the wholesale market as it relates to New York.
Well, wholesale is a tremendous opportunity, especially in Manhattan. When we look at all those illicit dispensaries that you and I walked through about a year ago, but finally, nice to see where the state is going, because let's face it, we all had high expectations for the state. We don't have to get into the rollout because we all know what happened there. But do you believe 2025, based on this trend right now, this will finally be the state that many people were hoping and envisioning for quite some time?
I don't think it's going to be what we were envisioning. You're talking about what an adult use market in Florida would have looked like with the $4 or $5 billion handle. California, what it looked like a couple of years ago. New York was supposed to be a very large market. Hitting $1 billion run rate for the size of the state of New York is small compared to the expectations. Also, just to draw a comparison to Florida, like I said, they have 261 doors open. In the recreational market, we have 699 as of today in a medical market. So the New York market has a lot of growth ahead of it, especially as it relates to doors opening around the state.
What's the numbers that we learned as to like what the overall legal market's full potential is in New York? I haven't come across that.
If I had to guess somewhere, but fully scaled and mature, somewhere probably in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 billion. I've seen numbers going back and forth, but I think it's a ways off from that. I would like to see maybe it hits a 1.3 to a 1.5 billion dollar run rate next year. It grows 30 to 50%. But let's see. Let's hope that the operations that are going on right now, closing down the illegal dispensaries and then opening the legal ones to start to really capture more market share, keeps on gaining the momentum that they've had in the last couple of months.
Well, let's face it, this is a turning point. Do you think for MSO companies, it's becoming the time to flip some of these medical dispensaries into recreational and paying, some of those fees, or are we still too early for that?
No, the fees are too expensive right now, and a lot of the MSOs are in cash preservation mode, as we all know, until we get some sort of federal reform and or legislative changes to the industry. I don't see them ponying up that fee anytime soon, and I've spoken to most of them from firsthand accounts. I think this lawsuit is going to either stall or accelerate that based on the findings and based on how it pans out here in the coming months. And we have no visibility as to when that lawsuit could potentially even be heard.
Well, we talk about growth states and Pennsylvania potentially, but if there's some sort of reform in place, like I understand New York's been around a while, but if, a lot of these companies that are cash constrained right now, look no further than even New York that we should pay attention to as well, and seeing how that's going to be an opportunity for some of these companies. But this trend is nice to see, and great to see the illicit market continue to being cracked down by state officials, which is great, because that was always probably the biggest question. Some of the feedback that we got was that, yes, dispensaries are closing, but they're reopening the next day. But that's not the case anymore from what you're hearing and seeing.
Yeah, and I think really what's going to be a big trend is you're going to see a lot of the companies just stick to wholesale right now as it relates to the New York market. I think Curaleaf flipped one of their doors.
They did,
which isn't even in Manhattan. It's in upstate New York. I think the Hudson Valley is where they had converted their store. But I mean, that being said, New York wholesale product is slim from a supply standpoint. So if you can grow flower, get in as many doors as possible, I mean, the wholesale market's the way to go until you can make that decision to flip your retail into adult use, which I think the cap is 3 anyway. So it's limited.
Well, I learned how big of a wholesale market it was from a conversation I had with Boris Jordan a year ago today. That was the day they listed on the TSX. Where does time go, right?
Yeah, it's already been a year now.
I know, it's crazy. Let's now switch to Washington and everyone's friend from the cannabis industry, Chuck Schumer, who is in the news again. The latest, he's now pointing the finger at the House and Republican leaders for delaying and stalling the Safe Banking Act. Names including Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Did you get a chance to see this story? And I think from the trips that you and I have made to Washington, nothing's changed because it continues to be more and more finger pointing, right?
Yeah, it was originally reported by Marijuana Moment. A source had said that Mitch McConnell and Mike Johnson were stonewalling Chuck Schumer from inserting it into the CR. This hasn't been substantiated by Mr. McConnell or Mr. Johnson. But I mean, Tom's reporting usually is pretty sound, so I'm assuming he's not making shit up and there is some substance here. That being said, I mean, the fact of the matter is, and I don't want to dwell too much on safe, Chuck needs to bring it to a floor vote. Reveal who's full of shit and who's going to vote no on it, and then we go from there. There's nothing he can lose now. He's about to relinquish his leadership position. Yeah. There's literally nothing that Chuck can lose.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more important issues right now, and they want to avoid obviously a government shutdown. Between
hold on. That person said that Marijuana Moment is the article in Marijuana Moment was not about the next attorney general. It was about the assistant attorney general for civil rights. That person is not relevant within the government. Like that take today was slow news day. Tom trying to post something that's anti-Trump. And I mean, everybody saw through that, but give me a quote from Pam Bondi where she's saying that she's against cannabis and that'll be a big deal. The article today was superfluous.
And we've explained this until we're blue in the face that it's not Mitch McConnell's. He doesn't have the authority to bring this as a floor vote. It all falls on to Chuck Schumer, and he had the necessary votes on the House side. We've said this time and time again. It's not about swaying one political party versus the other. As we've long said, we're all about pushing the narrative forward in the cannabis industry. And the person that is basically the Senate Majority Leader that can obviously authorize with enough votes to get this floor vote is Chuck Schumer. That's why we bring up Chuck all the time. So, yes, Mitch was the majority Senate leader when the Republicans control the Senate, but that is no longer the case anymore. And that is why we bring up Chuck's name from time and time again.
And just being honest, I don't think Mike Johnson is pro-cannabis.
No.
He's a red politician from Louisiana. I think he's just down the middle as it relates to it. I think Mike Johnson will act if Donald Trump says, hey, we want this pushed. John Thune was out there again today saying that he will push the Trump agenda. So if and when Donald decides that this is part of his agenda, which there's been nothing pointing to, he is actually going to be actionable on this, I don't see Thune being adversarial if Trump wants to get something through.
A majority of House Republican members have never voted for SAFE. That's fine. That, but
that's fine. So Chuck brings it to the floor. They're all brought into the light. We see who votes no, and then we pick up the pieces and go from there. And we call them. We see who's full of shit. But I'm not sitting here saying that Republicans are going to vote in droves for safe banking. Like that would just be that would just be ill-advised.
Right. But they did have enough votes for the people that did vote in favor for it. That was my point. Gretchen, if you're around and listening, maybe you could have provide a little bit of direction on here. But anyway, one thing that stood out to me as well, though, when we were in Washington is, like I said, at the forefront is always finger pointing. When you look at Donald Trump and his advisors, Elon Musk and Vivek, and on the changes that they want to make come next year, do you not think this is at the forefront? You know, when they look at the incompetence as to what's going on in Washington right now, it's the main reasons why they want changes because of all the finger pointing that just prevents anything from getting done.
Yeah, there's a lot of incompetence in Washington, but you can also say that the Trump administration has the Trump administration has every branch of government plus the Supreme Court right now. They can do whatever they want within reason.
Just got to make it happen.
If they want to get this stuff done, they'll get this stuff done. It's just a matter of priority, and it's a matter of moving on this. That's it. And you want to read the tea leaves? RFK wants to go after opioids. RFK has said he'd legalize cannabis. RFK is presumably going to be appointed the head of the HHS pending him getting through.
Yep.
That's good enough for me. Paired with what Donald Trump said about cannabis. I know he hasn't said anything since. He's had a lot of things to worry about after he said that. But it's going to be in the hands of the AG and of RFK if he does get through, which I'm pretty sure he's going to.
Bring on 2025 already, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's now move to the Midwest. And yeah, you gave me some good education before we got into this topic about where states are positioned within the actual country of America. Nebraska was actually south of Iowa. I was thinking it was further west, but always good to get reconnected to how the whole map is mapped out across different states in the country. But the reason I bring up Nebraska is because on election night, there was two measures that were voted and passed by the people of Nebraska. And now that's in danger of being overturned. So why is this happening and how is this happening, Anthony?
Why is it happening? Because the politicians in Nebraska want to circumvent the will of the people. Both of these measures were passed by a majority, 71 and 67%, I believe, respectively. And they are suing to overturn the measures. And one of them is on the grounds of they are claiming that medical cannabis laws cannot be implemented on the state level. I don't know how you can make those claims. There's a $2 billion market in Florida, and there are many, many mature medical markets across the United States that are enacted into law on the state level. So I don't know where they're going to go with these lawsuits, but the fact of the matter is they're just completely throwing caution to the wind and trying to circumvent the will of the people in Nebraska. It makes absolutely no sense. Like, why would these politicians let these things go to a vote if they're just going to try and upend them if they pass, and they passed by a majority? If I'm the people of Nebraska, I'm voting all of these people out the next time around. They have no business being in politics, as they obviously don't have the will of the people in their best interest as trying to upend something that passes by a 71% majority to me is just crazy. It's a slap in the face to your constituents.
71% and 67%. They want to review this. Not 51, 71. Wild.
Yeah.
Just goes to show how, man, I don't want to get into it, but how disconnected it is between politicians and everyday people. But welcome in 2025. Hopefully that changes. Do you think this has any kind of like, if this is successful and is overturned, like what do you think are the broader implications this could potentially have with other states outside of Nebraska?
I need to look into it more. And granted, I'm not an attorney, but I don't understand how they're going to be able to upend this measure after it gets voted in by a majority. And their argument is that the implementation of state level medical cannabis laws is illegal and impossible and basically negates, or not negates, but basically it's not compliant with federal law.
Right.
You'd have to basically say that every state that has a medical program right now is acting in an illegal nature, which I mean, federally, sure, but the state level cannabis businesses have certain protections, and these laws are implemented and these markets are functioning. This is just like crazy prohibition.
I hear you.
Rhetoric trying to overturn this stuff.
TDR's Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, with Anthony Varrell. Keep the comments flowing in. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Lots going on. Make sure to smash that like button and leave any comments, any topics that you want us to discuss before we log off here today. Let us know. You're going solo on Friday, my friend. You got any guests lined up yet, or you're still working on that?
Not yet. I'm working on someone. I want someone to be, I don't want to talk about policy, more so the business of cannabis. So I'll probably have someone hammered down tomorrow. Yeah,
I actually met somebody outside of Planet 13. I don't know if you guys got a chance to see some of the stuff I posted on Twitter, but it was cool to see that consumption lounge actually last week.
Yeah.
But they're on to some interesting things out in Las Vegas, but always a great dispensary to go and check out. They have those automated robotic robots that actually fight each other like Luke Skywalker. Have you seen that? Sorry, did you want to get to that?
No, I'm funny. This person, older gent in the comments, is just parroting the marijuana moment articles that we've already kind of said are frivolous at best.
Yeah.
The one today, at least.
Anyway, I met, hope to have her on. Her name's Juliana Whitney, but she was great. You know, she basically goes in early days of like a lot of dispensaries and provides the proper infrastructure for education with proper bud tenders. But we're hopefully going to have her on the next week or two just to like.
So Mr. Older Gent, I implore you, you might want to read what you're actually reading, because you've referred to Harmeet Dillon twice as a guy, and I'm almost positive it's a woman.
Okay.
So context clues.
Simon W. writes, Tesla is $420 today, and Musk's picture from 3 years ago is floating on X. Yes, I hear you.
I don't think Elon is going to be a shining knight for the cannabis industry as it relates to his influence in Washington. I don't think he's going to be an enemy, but I don't think that Elon is going to get into the cannabis legalization conversation per se. Elon's going to focus on Elon. He's going to focus on space. He's going to focus on Tesla. He's probably going to focus on AI as it relates to his core competencies. I don't see him being some knight in shining armor for the cannabis industry. That's going to be RFK.
Yeah. RL, can you get Elon to come on and see where he stands on cannabis?
Yeah.
I'd love to.
You can drive up tomorrow. I'll drive up to Mar-a-Lago and just wait at the gate to see if I can get him on camera.
Interesting. There's a gentleman that he's on the private side, on the private side of the cannabis industry in Michigan. We found out last week. Forget his name off the top of my head, but he's been spending a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago, and would love to be a fly on the wall to hear some of those conversations. But that was interesting. Some of the feedback that we heard last week in Las Vegas. Forget the gentleman's name at the top of my head, but hopefully we can have him on in the future at one of our podcasts, because I'd love to hear some of the feedback as to how Donald Trump currently is looking and viewing this space, and hopefully the job creations and economic power that this industry could produce once he steps into office with his new administration. But I've got an evergreen video coming out tomorrow. We did one yesterday about Kim Rivers and the relationship with Donald Trump. That thing's flying high right now. Got a lot of views, so appreciate everybody for logging on and watching that, leaving comments and likes. But You may or may not like this one tomorrow, but it's going to be the reasons why we don't think safe banking will pass during lame duck. I'll break down the reasons why. So make sure to log on at 4 o'clock and you'll learn more here at TDR's Traded Black podcast.
I mean, I was getting a lot of responses today that the workers, the 500,000 workers from the cannabis industry need to march on Washington. That might not be a bad idea.
Of course it would work.
We've tried everything else. But
it would work. It would 100% work. I saw it firsthand in September when that constituent in New Jersey, what was her name again? Had the dispensary. She raised all that money and had yet to open up her doors. And then a week later, she got her license. She got in front of Cory Booker, and within a week later, she got her license. So but here's an interesting thing that we heard last week too. Some of the top MSOs are cutting big checks to lobbying beginning in 2025. So hopefully this gets a lot of attention in this space because we all need it. And I think it's the moment of truth time for this industry. So,
I mean, yeah, if you look at the tape, I mean, a lot of these equities right now are trading like some of these companies are going out of business. So, I mean, it's.
Do you remember 2 years ago when you interviewed Kevin O'Leary in the back?
Out there.
Remember when you interviewed O'Leary? I set up the old Escalade. I was filming you guys, and we were at a crypto conference in Manhattan. That was a week or 2 weeks after the whole fiasco with FTX?
Yes, that was about 2 weeks after FTX.
Fast forward 2 years later, and look where we're at now. I'm not going
to say crazy to think.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say it's crazy to think that Sam Bankman is rotting in jail right now, and he just needed to hold on for like a couple more months, and he probably would have gotten away. Not even gotten away with it. He probably would have been able to make everybody whole. The way the market's been.
Yeah. Look at all these comments. It's just like one stock after another and where they're trading. I get it, people.
But
it's not just one. It's the entire sector. Go ahead.
It's not even that. It's these stocks are not indicative of the underlying assets.
Agreed.
Some of them are. Some of them are flashing what's to come for the businesses. Others are just not indicative of the underlying businesses. And that's why I said, I mean, we're probably entering the period where you don't want to take a basket approach. This is a stock picker's market. And you need to be selective.
Yeah. Irish, you're right. Bank of Canada did drop interest rates 0.5 basis points, now 3.25%, if I'm correct. And you'd think the Canadian names would have been up. Maybe.
What's the exchange rate at right now? I think isn't it like $1.43?
I was looking at going to New York a couple days before Christmas. Best time of year to go to New York is that time. But man, when you and I went out to Mastro's last week for a nice little steak dinner, I looked at the credit card transaction this week. Another reason number 422 as to why Shad wants to move to the United States of America.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, when I used to invest in a couple of positions in private companies in Canada, once I sell the position, pay tax, and then convert the currency, it's gotten chopped by almost 50%. It's crazy. That exchange rate's no joke.
Well, love being in Vegas last week. You took off early. I was at the sports bar book and Cosmo. There must have been 1,000 fans for the Packers and Lions game. And holy cow, Dan Campbell. If Chuck Schumer had brass, you know what, like Dan Campbell, we might get somewhere. Man is loved in Detroit right now. All right, that wraps up Into the Wire. We're just rambling right now, but let's welcome in. It's Wednesdays, and it's time for our weekly segment with the man with the beads, Seth Yakutin. Good to see you, sir. Didn't run into you last week in Vegas. We were going back and forth, but it's always.
I didn't want to bother you. You were busy holding court out there. You know, I kind of waved. You didn't see me. Shad was surrounded by hundreds. It was with a line. It was amazing.
Right. Anyway, we actually got to check out. We had lots of conversations last week, which I'm sure you did too. I actually got a chance to cruise through the old Tesla loop from the convention center over the Fontainebleau with Anthony. Wow, that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Wow. I've never done that.
Yeah, I've actually got some video footage. I'll text it while you're speaking to our producer, Arns. Maybe we can bring it up towards the end of your segment to see.
You must have better friends than I do. Or a better credit line. You must have a big credit line out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, look, everybody that didn't make it, this is the industry's biggest conference. It's held around mid-November or early parts of December, depending on a couple of weeks each and every year. We didn't see the usual suspects as far as the top executive names. Though Anthony and I did the one night, we were at the Las Vegas Country Club for an event with the Attach, which stands for the American Trade of Cannabis and Hemp. They were there and got some great dialogue just on the direction of the industry and the support that I think a lot of companies are going to be lobbying for this space, which is great to see. But what was your big takeaway from the conversations that you had last week? Like, what's one thing that you heard more so than often that left you thinking like, this is what I heard the most at MJ Biz this year?
People are buckling down for 2025. They don't see the release valve in sight that they were hoping that they were going to get with adult use in Florida. The fact that we don't really have an exceptional amount of clarity about what's going to happen with Schedule 3 or at the federal level, I think has people that were,
agreed,
exhausted, maybe ready to tap out, folks that are tired, exhausted, and those of us who have determined to just put our head down and paddle, to grab another paddle, get some electrolytes and just keep going.
So what was your response to some of that? What would you say to these conversations that you had with people?
I think that's right. I think that's right. Was as we've started to develop our relationship, there's a couple people that are going to struggle. There's a couple people that are going to be able to tread water, and there's a couple people that are going to be able to, jump up out of that pool. And I think if you're struggling, it's probably going to be a struggle. And if you're treading water, it's going to be harder to tread water. And I do think the people who can raise capital and have functioning business models really have the ability to make catalyst moves this year, either through M&A or just more growth, because I think the attrition is gonna be real this year.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway, Anthony?
Same as Seth's. I mean, it's sink or swim right now. Those that don't want to be here, I mean, they're going to find themselves from the outside looking in the sector. I mean, those that do want to be here and that are down for the cause and building sustainable businesses, we'll be able to find capital. We'll be able to continue to grow. And I mean, I think those that are still around are going to grow by some of the parts tremendously in the next couple of years. I think there's going to be distressed assets, and I think there's going to be some healthy additions on the private side that get done throughout these companies that do rise to the top.
So we talked. Go ahead.
Sorry. It was surprisingly well attended. My take. I'm a heavy conference circuit person from September until the beginning of December. I think I went to 10 conferences. I have, for the past several years, not gone to MJ Biz because I kind of thought it was just too big and a bit of a waste of time. It changed my view on the meeting going this year. Everybody is there, and you kind of have to be there. Yeah, if you can set it up right, the quality of your meetings can be pretty high level, and you're going to get a broad intersection of just about everybody. So you can really understand what's going on in a lot of states and at a high level with a lot of organizations. And that was very valuable for me. So,
well, there's always a great excuse to be in Las Vegas, right? But I
mean, we don't get to see these people on a daily basis. Actually, we don't get to see these people on a monthly basis. I didn't think there was any way that we shouldn't have been in Las Vegas.
It was this new, but they had a completely layout in the floor at the convention center where the one section was all cultivation. Did you get a chance to see that at all, Seth?
I've been to that show in Vegas 11 times, and I've never been on the convention center floor. So
we don't normally go a lot, but what we've found is that more and more companies are reaching out to us from a B2B standpoint because of the network that we have. So it was very interesting just to have some of the conversations with some of these people that we walked through. But, like you said, like as far as the turnout, the floor space was pretty full from what I saw.
It was very full, and that's the first time that they've bifurcated it into cultivation and kind of like everything else. What I was surprised of is I walked the entire floor on the everything else side. I don't understand for the life of me how there are so many packaging businesses. There had to have been 50 packaging businesses on the floor, and then maybe 24 just vape technology businesses. The broad array of them was mind blowing.
We talk a lot about the things that are wrong and the issues with stocks and undervalued and the pressure. Remember, we do have a $30 billion industry on our hands.
Oh yeah,
right. It might be a collection of businesses getting into an industry, but you have a lot of nooks and crannies out there, a lot of different ways for even ancillary service providers to make money in the space, as evidenced by the proliferation of things that you think are redundant, and I think are redundant as well. But it was definitely a few days well spent, and I am glad that I had a baboon liver on hold for myself at UCLA, so I could come home and immediately do a blood transfusion, and then go right up to Joshua Tree and decompress in a teepee for 3 days. So it was awesome.
One thing's for sure, Futurola. It's the company that specializes in pre-rolls. I don't know if you saw their setup. It was what, 100-foot screen. Like you'd had to wear sunglasses standing in front of this thing. But every year, I don't know what that would cost, but they had all in the white outfits, look very pristine. But there's a lot of companies, including Village Farms, that actually works with them. Go ahead.
Just so you know, Shad, that booth was small compared to their past years.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That thing was massive.
I've seen their booth. I've seen their booth twice that size.
Wow. Question for you, Seth. Alex Solstice writes, does Seth know hedge fund manager Carlos Cannell from California? Carlos just became SNDL board director. No?
I can say that I do not know Carlos Cannell from California.
All right. There we go. Oh, listen, I want to switch now. There's some new data that was released confirming unit sales volume has increased, but pricing and store level unit economics has decreased. So basically, people are selling a lot more product at a cheaper price, which many in the industry, I think, are very much already aware of. Do you think this is a trend that's not going away anytime soon, Seth?
I don't see it going away anytime soon. I mean, we've now seen quarter over quarter decreases in retail level sales at pretty much 10 MSOs. So if you look at Q3 24 to Q3 23, aggregate retail level sales across the 10 largest MSOs, the 10 biggest publicly traded MSOs, with the exclusion of Glass House, are down 15.2%.
Right.
So I don't see how that changes. And you also see unit sales increasing. And if you look at how it kind of works, Michigan and Florida, you have retail pricing that's down almost 25 to 30% from the beginning of the year until the end of the year. I don't know how you come back from discounting once you've instituted it and you've conditioned a customer to that and a market to it, and then all the other players in the market move to that conditioning. It's what we've seen in California. It's what we've seen in Colorado. It's what we've seen in Oregon. It's what we've seen in Washington. I don't see how we're not going to see it in some of these other states where we thought it wasn't going to happen.
We had a conversation, Anthony, when you and I were taking an Uber over to that one event, Grasslands. One of the contacts we were speaking to in there was saying that the price per gram in Michigan a year ago was $40, and now it's $3.95. Is that correct?
I don't know that that's correct. It doesn't sound crazy.
That's what she said, but does that seem kind of far-fetched?
That's not correct.
No. Doesn't seem far-fetched. I mean, look, if you have wholesale indoor product that when a market comes online is selling for $3,000 to $4,000 a pound, and it comes down to $900 a pound, then you have 70% price reduction in your biomass input. Then to say that you have 75 to 90% price reduction in a cost per gram doesn't sound to be crazy to me.
Yeah.
In one of our last conversations, we talked about these periods of excess EBITDA, and that's what happens, right? You have a limited number of producers at the highest end of the market. Product is scarce. Price goes up. Supply is significantly less than demand. As a market matures and more supply comes, the price drops. And you also in cannabis, remember, have other forces working against pricing and market that you might not have in other commodity-based markets. So
yeah, that's the number that I heard, guys. I see what you're saying. I could see $8 a gram, $3 per gram. No way.
That's but what I was refuting is I'm almost a year ago. There's no way cannabis was selling for $40 a gram in Michigan.
2 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe two, even third. There was the price compression there has been going on for years now.
very close-knit amount of operators. They work very closely with each other in the state of Michigan. That is for sure. Riv writes, can we talk about Flora Growth Corporation developments in THC beverage market? You guys know much about that?
No.
No.
I know Sammy Dorf was part of the executive chairman.
So it's funny. It's funny that you say that because Sammy is texting me as we speak, and I saw that it was announced yesterday that he was going to become executive chairman of Flora. I'm assuming this is an Agrify GTI 2.0 play. Flora is a NASDAQ listed company that's in the hemp touching space, and you're not going to find anybody on the planet who's a bigger fan of Sammy Dorf than this guy. So if Sammy's going to get involved with something, I think it's going to do well. And I think he's one of the better and broader operators in the space that I've come across.
Why is that?
He built Verano. He's everything he's touched has turned out pretty well. He was a pioneer on the licensing side. He and a partner have a several store retail shop in Illinois that's been pretty successful. Yeah, I think when you look at somebody who's had success after success on a repeated basis, it's either luck or an anomaly or a trend. And I would say that my friend Mr. Dorf is trending pretty hard up and to the right. Yeah.
Well, good reasons why, right? You got to believe in people. That's for sure. All right. Last thing I wanted to bring up before I let you run is what'd you guys think? I know we had Bina on last week, Anthony, but that announcement last week with Organigram and Motif, that was a pretty big announcement to say the least. But I thought based on sentiment, it seemed pretty positive. But I'll first start with you, Anthony. I know we got a chance to speak to Bina, but now that we've got you one-on-one here, what do you make of that deal and that announcement? What that means for that company?
I think it was a good deal. I think the most interesting thing from that deal is Organigram bought a category that we haven't that we don't really see a lot of that from an M&A perspective. I mean, I know that we saw Curaleaf buy Select back in the day, which you could argue that was for the category of vape, but I think they mostly bought it for the brand. Bina bought Motif, and Organigram acquired Motif to become the leader in that vape category, to solidify themselves as the top dog in Canada from a market share perspective. So now they own flower, pre-rolls, if I'm not mistaken, and vape. They've got the top one or two market share in all of those categories. I think that kind of foreshadows what's going to go on in the US.
Yeah.
These big MSOs, go buy a large gummy brand, go buy a large vape brand, start getting category specific versus, let's say, state specific with these assets from a footprint standpoint. Go buy brands. That's going to bolster your market share, and that's going to hopefully be accretive. And you're not going to have to deal with all of the trials and tribulations of integration and all these assets. Like, go buy brands. And categories. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that last week, right? That private brands buying private brands. I don't talk a lot about Canada. I think from my perspective, this looks like a decent move by Organigram and somewhat defensive given the amount of other consolidation that's going on there. They're making a play for space, and it looks like it's a decent use of proceeds from what I can tell. Yeah. So I'm usually pretty matter of fact. It doesn't look like it was dumb, desperate, or not well thought out, and doesn't look like they significantly overpaid for it.
90 million again, was it right, Anthony? Cash and shares?
Yes, cash and stock.
Yeah.
I'm happy to announce a week from tomorrow, I'm actually doing a panel with David Klein, Michael DeJulio, and Bina Goldenberg. So when you think about a Canadian panel, that's probably the three biggest names.
Better you than me. And you're Canadian, right? Good. So
I'm a Canadian wannabe American. That's what
gotcha.
I'm at. So
all right,
you're gonna catch some heat from that.
I'm a Canarican. That's what I'm at.
I might catch the heat for that.
Yeah. Last thing I want to bring up, we've actually had a few people reach out. They're like, hold on. Seth hasn't talked about Verano yet. I know in your notes that you sent some stuff over, and it was about Verano being at a cheap price right now. First thing, everybody, this is not investment advice. This is purely opinion. Any opinions expressed by us or guests as investment advice is purely opinion. So please, if you can, make sure that you tread lightly, obviously, with what we're saying here. But a lot of questions are being asked right now about some of these stocks and if they're super cheap. And a lot of investors, I think right now are just worried as to like what we're trading from a public equity standpoint. But what was some of the questions that you received over the past week? And you want to address maybe some of those topics?
Sure. I mean, I think somebody wanted me to kind of do a deep dive on Verano because I had outlined, or I said that I thought that they were relatively undervalued. It's funny. News travels fast. I did a conversation with Frank Colombo on Friday of last week, and Frank is, I think, by any stretch of the imagination, probably one of the most versed valuation experts in the space. Works for Viridian Capital Management, and he cautioned me that when you look at a couple of different things that you would add into their real liability number, maybe they're not as undervalued as you think. I think, however, if I take it to a larger sector view, right? 4 or 5 year consensus analyst CAGR for the industry for the next 5 years is somewhere between about 4.5% and 5%, with sales getting to like $38 to $40 billion by 2029. If you look at where things trade, and things are currently trading at about 4 to 4.5 times, you could probably argue on a multiple basis they should probably trade like 8 to 8.5 times.
Yeah.
And I think as a result, pretty much almost every tier one that isn't significantly over levered, I think is undervalued. And when I just look at the big four, and this is no technical analysis, just me talking, and I look at Curaleaf, Trulieve, GTI, and Verano, I feel relative to its competitive asset base in those three or those four, I feel like GTI and Verano are the ones that I kind of want to own, because I feel GTI is probably the best operated company, and I just still, relative to its balance sheet and its income statement, that it's undervalued relative to those other two or three, and I'll stay on that hill.
Okay. Duly noted. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But again, as I express, people, these are not investment advice. So I think, the big takeaway here, and I want to have people get something out of this here today. But we talked about the conference last week, some of the things that we heard. I know a lot of people right now are concerned, with where we're at right now, heading into tax law selling season and so many unknowns. But I think it's also important to share that, look, change is on the way. Whether that happens or not, we don't know. But it's just, you have a new administration coming in. There's been some things that have been announced recently that feel people somewhat optimistic. You've got some big players in the cannabis space that are going to be forging over some pretty big checks to start lobbying for this space. So it seems like, this is moment of truth time. We've talked about this, that if this doesn't change within a couple of years, this is what you could see. But 2025, as far as what I'm seeing, as far as a trend, it's moment of truth time for a lot of companies, and why reform hopefully will be at the forefront. We need change. Would you agree with that as we head into 2025?
Look, I mean, I think a lot of your audience wants trading information and wants to profit from trading, right?
Agreed.
And I think if you look at your base case, expect low revenue growth and flat margins. So stocks aren't going to trade on technical fundamental analysis. You have two different catalyst events if you're a trader that are going to come in, right? You got 8 refis that are coming, and you can peg them if you do your homework. Yeah. And those are going to be catalysts to buy and sell around the announcements of those. Well, and it's pretty public what the maturities of those are. And if you're a smart trader, you can get around that. And obviously, our sector trades like a meme stock. And, if Trump blows his nose tomorrow and out comes, a scent of a positive sentiment in cannabis, you're going to see a 12 to 15% blip either way. So I think if you're a smart trader, there's catalysts that are coming, and if you can figure out how to get ahead of or behind catalysts, you can probably make money. Otherwise, I think you're in a pretty status quo market. But it seems to me that if I'm in market every day and I'm playing volume, there's 3 or 4 different ways I can play it. And those are the 3 things that I would look at. But this is not IBM, Apple, Tesla, GE. This is not your mom's your grandma's blue chip, kind of sector. This is single digit top line growth, volatility based upon the hint of news as opposed to actual data. And that's how the sector is going to be for a while, until we get some change. We can get some of these stocks on a big board.
Yeah, I hear
And
you.
for context, Trulieve is actually almost back to its pre-HHS announcement price. It's at $4.83 today.
Wow.
Which I think the pre-HHS was $4.50. It has round tripped back. Yeah. It has round tripped back to there.
Well, before I let you go, did you want to see our little venture on the Tesla Loop?
I'd love to. I'd also like to loop back to two things. You should definitely have Juliana Whitney on the show. Really bright mind in the space. Really like her a lot. And
I was emailing on my phone in front of Planet 13, soaking up the sun because I was, I'm only a matter of hours before I had to fly back. But we actually sat down for like an hour. But bright mind, great person. But she had talked about all the companies that she works with, but she basically goes in as a consultant for early stage dispensaries. But, one of the things I heard at some of these events is the amount of SKUs that are in the average dispensary. And like, how's a bud tender supposed to have his head wrapped around all this product, which is why only so much product in the same product is moved every time. But she actually specializes in those types of things. So I thought, ding, the light went off. Let's have her on because that's obviously going to be an important topic to, when it comes to certain companies and their bottom line and the maturity of the overall industry. That's the storylines that we love to meet people and get to learn more about it.
Really interesting perspective. There's another catalyst that I look at, and you kind of touched on before, which is, I'm not smart enough to figure out how political processes work, but I am smart enough to figure out how to follow the money. And there are two extremely well-funded and extremely politicized and extremely powerful labor unions in the Teamsters and the UFCW that are circling this industry. And they're circling it in different ways. And I'm going to tell you that a dark horse for me is that if either of those two organizations could figure out how to become a catalyst, that could be a way and a path to reform and capital for the entire industry. Now, that's kind of like, every leader of Islam and Judaism coming together and saying kumbaya. So it's an outside chance. But I keep no, I mean, it's possible. I keep bumping into the Teamsters and I keep bumping into the UFCW. And, when I see a large pile of capital that's that politically connected and has an agenda and has a workforce that it doesn't own and wants to drive policy, I'm not that smart, but it feels like there's a pathway to the White House that one of those two groups could forge. And maybe you heard it here first, but that's one of the things that I have my eye on in 2025.
Okay. Good to know.
And by the way, Gary, the monthly subscription model that rivals High Tide, Verano actually has that with the Cabbage Club. I'm sure there's a couple MSOs that have it as well. I just don't know the branding of their actual loyalty program.
Cool.
Loyalty programs, big, huge deals. I can tell you from this company's experience, the amount of revenue that we can attribute to loyalty program, although I do not know that we publicly disclose it, would blow your mind. It's sure. When you have the right loyalty program at a cannabis operator, you can drive significant revenue, significant recurring revenue, significant retained sticky revenue from a passionate customer base. And that's the most important thing. I think GTI does a really good job of doing that as well. So
Shadow Mime, you're right. You don't want to adopt cannabis model at the federal level. Amen to that. They legalized it and then it just kind of like they did nothing with it. Excise tax, they look at it the same way. Can you guys advertise tobacco still in the US?
Yeah.
Limited, but yes.
Limited. Yeah. Completely limited.
They view cannabis the same way as tobacco. Like you cannot advertise anywhere when it comes to cannabis in Canada and paying high taxes. And the only way that you can really start to shed some of that stigma is associating it with, events, television commercials. I think some radio stations actually have advertisement pertaining to it. They kind of sneak that under the table, but for the most part, there's just not a lot of marketing allowed in Canada. And we all know the excise tax that these companies are paying as well. All right, Arns, bring up that Tesla loop. Can we see that for a second? Let's show Seth. Press play, my friend. But like, look at this tunnel that you just go down. How tight
How
that
did you even get in here?
It was
so
right.
There's just these little ports that just go right under.
It's wild. Would you say how much it's generating revenue wise?
It generates 75 million annually. This network, it's free if you want to cruise around the convention center property, but if you go off property of the convention center, it's like $5 for a ticket.
I could have used that.
Yeah, it's great. I had
Joe,
no idea it was there.
Actually, by the way, I'm actually taking a tour where I'm going this weekend. I'm actually going to be in the same town as the facility of Canopy Growth. So I'll get some footage that I'll post on Twitter for everybody. David Klein's coming on. We're doing a pre-record with him on Monday morning. We're going to post that next Tuesday, Joe, regarding CUSA and the acreage deal. We're getting an update on that. But thanks for commenting on that. We'll have that for an update early next week. So that'll be rolling. But Anthony, you're solo on Friday. If you need me to log on and say a few things from my phone from the Canopy facility on Friday, I probably can arrange that. But you're off on your own, but that's okay. Seth, appreciate the time. We'll check up with you. Actually, we're not going to check in with you until the new year because you're busy for the holiday season. So happy holidays to you and your family.
Gentlemen, my most sincere pleasure. Thank you as always. Best to all of you and all of your listeners for a happy new year and a happy holidays.
All right. Thanks, Seth. All right, my friend. Well, like I said, I'm off. I'm on the road now in the next 20 minutes. And best of luck on Friday, which I'm sure you'll do more than great. And yeah, today's show was decent. But any other parting words that you'd like to outline?
I'm good. I will be on Friday. Hold it down.
Good stuff. All right, gents, make sure, ladies and gentlemen, I should say, leave some comments below. Anything else that you'd like to us discuss, bring up some of these topics. If we've forgotten anything, be more than happy to address those things and reach out to our network to get you feedback ASAP. And make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. A lot of questions and concerns that you have. We provide morning updates in your inbox at 8 a.m. So make sure to subscribe. QR code is right now on the template, so scan that when you get a chance and subscribe to have up-to-date information and, most importantly, takeaways. Not just information, but takeaways from you, Mr. AV. All right, that wraps things up. We'll see everybody back here on Friday, okay?
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody, for watching our latest Trade to Black podcast. Listen, the U.S. election is now over. We're now in some uncharted territories and what to expect next, knowing the Trump administration will kick in next year. So what is next for the cannabis industry? This is why we need to stay connected. Ask any questions. We love your feedback. And always, as usual, if you haven't subscribed, please do so now. We greatly appreciate it. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.